So we're recording? Yeah, basically. No white millennial woke whammy wakes up at 7 a.m. And just generally speaking, all the HR, all the middle management, all the hiring managers, they're all millennial white woke whammies at this point in time. A few of them aren't white, but they're all millennials or zoomers and woke as fuck. And so what does that mean? They're going to be ideologically a certain way, and laziness is a big part of that. Don't get me wrong, my sister's white, and she's a woke whammy, and she's a millennial, and she's a hard worker. But generally speaking, these ladies are going to be lazy. Because women and men are different. And there's been, of course, when the generations pass on to the next generation, in this case, all of the middle management, all the office manager, all the HR positions, all the accountant positions, all of the doctor positions in the doctor places I go to, all of them, doctors and nurses, they've all been taken over by women. And generally speaking, all of these women are millennials and white and woke. And so generally speaking, they have taken over all of that industries. And many of them, if not all of them, hate men with a burning passion in their bosoms, or perhaps in their lower regions. A burning passion to hate men. And they hate white men the most. They hate heterosexual men the most. And they hate black men too, if the black men are based. If you're too based, you're a black man, you might be out of a job. And so this is just a fact of our reality. The elites passed on that specific type of job to the white millennial woke whammy, and the white millennial woke whammy, so white millennial, WMW, yeah, the WM, yeah, so WWM, whatever you want to call it. And so basically, that's just a fact of your reality, and so like you could live with it or you could not live with it, but like you're gonna have to live with it. So if you're a man, white, brown, black, it doesn't matter. If you're an actual fucking man and masculine and want to do man work, you'd be better off applying for a construction job than working in a theater. Even if you're overqualified for the theater, it's just whammies there, and maybe one gay, And so basically, the men might hire you, but the women won't. Generally speaking, they won't. Maybe if you're a young twink and you look like a twink and you look like a little faggot, maybe they'll hire you. But generally speaking, white women hate men. They've been driven to hate their equal. And to a degree, men have been driven to hate women as well. This is how the elites were able to pit us against each other through, Marxist feminism, Marxism, and feminism. And that's all they needed. Basically, postmodernism helps in there, and there's the new utopian pagan religion, which is like the most postmodern thing at all, but I talked about that in a different discussion, so go ahead and check that out on this channel. The universal pagan religion, the new religion. Now, wokeism is a religion, and it is their religion, and so they will be very zealous as religious types. And it is the extinction religion, because everything inside of it maximizes extinction. And you can see this in its fruit. You don't have to ask me permission to believe that fact. You can see it in everything it does, from promoting the largest genocide in all of human history to the second largest genocide in the West, the third or fourth largest genocide. It promotes all the big genocides, except for the Israel one. Good on them for not promoting that one. The Gaza, Israel, Iran genocide. That's good for them, okay? But, they promote vaccines, and mRNA is objectively a genocide. 38 million dead intentionally. I don't consider that to be anything short of a genocide. So, you also have pemphigus vulgaris, myocarditis, SIDS, and adult infant death syndrome, right? So, they're for all of that shit. They're for transitioning the kids to extinction. Objectively, a 40% suicide rate is a 40% extinction. And so, they're for that. They love it. So you have to understand, they are fucking crazy. You can't reason with them. A woman is a mystical spirit that needs to be bound to reality by a man. That is the reality. And so what has happened in the West over the course of the past 100 years is women were let free, unbound. And so they, as mystical spirits, they are always more into the postmodern, into the more subjective nature of reality. And reality is like, to a degree, subjective and to a degree objective. And so they go the subjective way. And so they just go crazy because they have no grounding, no rock, no anchor. And that's just the nature of whammy. Like it or love it, that's the nature of whammy. Men are the opposite, generally speaking. If you've got a lot of estrogen and not a lot of testosterone, you eat a lot of soy, because soy is literally an organic estrogen. Literally. Soy boy, beta clock boy, right? So then maybe you lean a little bit more feminine, but generally speaking, you've got balls, right? Okay, so basically what you end up having here is when women lead themselves and lead humanity, they lead us to the cliff of extinction. And that's a fact. You can see it in the stars themselves. You can see it in the cycles. You can see it in the ancient tales of Adam and Eve. And you can see it in everything in our civilization. Okay? When men lead, and they're based, they lead humanity away from extinction. Okay? There are sex roles, not gender roles. Gender is an ideological construct invented to confuse you. There is no such thing as gender. It's literally, it starts off as being genus. That's what it meant, genus or species. Gender meant genus or species. And then they change it, and the Jews in Nazi Germany, Weimar Germany, who were writing all the books the Nazis were burning, you know, how to transition your kid to extinction 50% faster or whatever, that type of book, you know, how to perform blowjobs for kids, you know. Basically, those were the type of books the Nazis were burning. Not saying the Nazis were good guys, but even bad guys can sometimes see things that are bad and fight bad. So what you end up having is you end up having basically 100 years of women being unbound from reality. And so the subjective spirits come in. The demons and the spirits of subjectivity, of objectivity, of objectification, of nonsense terms like objectification. Listen, you've got organics and there's objective reality. To a degree, you have objective reality. If you believe in universal pagan religion, you're just like, I can manifest, I can just think my thoughts, and I'm God, so I can think my thoughts and turn it into reality. But when you come back to objective reality, there's something there that God can change, but you apparently can't so much. And so that's the difference between you and God. You can't alter reality at its fundamental levels, not so much. Not that easily. Not just like, oh, I'm manifesting the girlfriend, platinum blonde, right here, please. Oh, it didn't work, Like, what the fuck, dude? Come back to reality. And that's what being a man is all about, is coming back to reality. So you have to anchor your whole family to reality. You have to anchor your woman to reality, because if you let her go, she will. And this might seem like a diss towards women, but no, as a mystical spirit, you're capable of things that a grounded rock is not capable of. So you have the mystical spirit and you have the grounded rock. Okay, what it means to be an exohuman woman means to be that mystical spirit that is grounded. It means to be beautiful and courageous in her own way, beautiful on the inside, pure and feminine, but also capable. Think of like the Wild West woman who was the wife, who went with her husband, and then they had kids along the way to colonize the West during the 1800s in America. She had a rifle to shoot coyotes and Indians if they showed up, but also she was feminine. She had 15 kids, and she's her great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. And that's the not entrepreneur, but that's the enterprising spirit. That's the feminine that's capable. And so like you have that capability. The woman who can shoot the coyote, but not right now, she's giving birth. It's like the woman, 15th kid, right? That's the most pro-salvation, or the most anti-extinction kind of woman. That's the type of woman we need to breed through culture. And the type of man we need to breed through culture is the one who's going to set up the turrets so she doesn't have to shoot while she's giving birth, right? Set up the turrets to shoot the coyotes or the Indians. It's just a joke. Don't get offended. And so basically, he's going to set up the turrets and he's gonna go and do the lumberjack work to build the bigger house with bigger turrets, right? And maybe he has a eunuchs to guard his wife. Maybe he comes back and he takes care. The point is, when men lead, and they're good men, base men, righteous men, you have a extinction retarded civilization. When women lead, any kind of women lead, you have extinction. When any kind of women lead, when any kind of women educate, when they're in charge of education, you have extinction. Because, you can see this. This is just what happens. This is what has happened. 100 years of women coming into the education system. And the outcome is, you can't argue with this. This is a fact. The outcome is extinction. Women, generally speaking, are more likely to teach extinction and indoctrinate extinction into your kids. And so you have a 1.6 mortality rate. That wouldn't happen without the 19th Amendment. That wouldn't happen with first wave feminism, second wave feminism, third wave feminism, fourth wave feminism. All kinds of feminism, if you look at the original sin, all kinds of feminism are objective spits in the face of God. Because all kinds of feminism reject reality, reject sex roles, reject that rock, right? The rock and the spirit gotta be put together. Because if you just have the spirit, you're fucked. If you just have the rock, there's no reproduction either. And so, understanding that men have their nature and it's not perfect, and if they're left to their nature, you don't have good. And when women are left to their nature as well, you don't have good. The difference is, when men are left to their nature, you have barbaric times. 95% of all the men who lived allegedly were murdered 9,000 years ago. Murdered by war. Not just women being choosy, because they found the corpses in the graveyards, and these motherfuckers were buried with axes in their heads. Okay? So, allegedly, and this is as far as the geneticists are concerned, it's a genetic fact, but I have to look more into it. Maybe it's just an alt-right conspiracy theory, I don't know, but 95% of the men 5% of the men survived in the war that killed 95% of the men. And so they each got 16, 17, 18, 19 wives. It's probably more like the chief got 55 wives, and then the other ones got like 3. Oh, I only get 3 wives. But the thing is, that's what happens when men go their own way. That's what happens when men don't have a balance. They just go fucking crazy. They don't quite go to extinction, but 95% of the men being dead is some kind of extinction. It's 95% of the men extincted. And so that's also bad in extinction. Okay, so it's bad if just the men are completely, the only thing that has power, right? When women have power in a different way. And so when you have that balancing act, or you have religion or morality or something to balance the men, right? And the men lead, but the women aren't the ones educating. They're not the ones leading. And you're based on a moral construct and a superior culture. I would argue that all the cultures that you had that were superior failed you because they couldn't stop the extinction religion, and they didn't. So you need a new superior culture, a culture that's actually better. But the exohuman woman is like an Amish woman, maybe a Hasidic Jew, or a traditional Muslim woman, in one way, in that she's ultra traditional. She's going to put her family first. And so what happened a long time ago, what was worked for millions, if not hundreds of millions of years of human beings existing, was you have the man working for the tribe and the woman working for the family. The woman didn't work for a corporation. The man didn't work for the corporation. But the woman also didn't work for the tribe. The woman did not work for the tribe. The woman worked for the family. The kids worked for the woman worked for the family. The head of the family worked for the tribe. And so then you have a pyramid of interaction that gets out to another pyramid, where you have a triangle, you have an order of interaction that interacts with the rest of society. And then that's the fundamental building block of civilization, is a family. And not I hate to break it to you, not a gay family, not a trans family, not a woke family, not an extinct family, not a family that isn't a family, but it's just called a family. No, you gotta reclaim that word, because family means family. Just like a family of ducks, just like a family of birds, or lions or whatever, they do their own thing, but like a family of swans, a family is a family. It is male and female reproducing, raising young. That's the objective term of family. And so what these Marxist feminist types have done is to dilute family. They stole the term, and so they're the ones probably who got you to use the term nuclear family. That's a no-speak term. No-speak is language that is used to be deceptive on purpose. And it's lie, a language that you lie with. Misinformation is no-speak, but so is wokish, so is double-speak and truth deception, forked tongue. Forked tongue like the word healthcare, Semite, anti-Semite, gender. These are forked tongue terms. These are devil's tongue, okay? These are terms that are lying to you. And so just like that, they use the word family, and they use the term of nuclear family for actual family, for family. It doesn't need any acronyms. I mean, it doesn't need any adjectives. Onus is on you if you create a new kind of family. You add the adjective, not the family gets to be a family. And so then, that way, just like with democracy, there's only one kind of democracy. And that's when, there's never been one successful big democracy or empire democracy, as far as I can tell. But the only one kind of democracy is direct democracy. It's the only kind. The thing is, what they did is they changed it. They stole the term democracy from itself so that they could use it for communism and socialism. And then for real democracy, they would use the term direct democracy. Just like with nuclear family, they stole family away from its own definition and use the term nuclear family for real family, for actual family, for family. And then they use family all by itself for any kind of degenerate family that will most likely increase you to extinction. These are the type of families that are going to push you to extinction. Like, in one way or another, they're going to be more extinction vibration. They're going to vibrate with extinction. The original family, the real family is going to be the most extinction retarded thing, and it's always been the most extinction retarded thing, as far as family goes. And so, understanding that, like, sure, not everyone has to reproduce. If you still got 3% growth rate, that's great, but the more you encourage extinction, the more you have it. So an extinction is any one thing when you apply it to one person. If you apply that to the entire species, and you have the outcome of extinction, but it's extinction for that one person. You can think of it as pro-extinction, extinction aligned, adjacent, something that's, extinction-y, extinction-ish, but regardless, if it's a 40% suicide rate, that's a 40% extinction. That's 40%, right? If you have one person dying, that's 1/8 billionth or 9 billionth of the species, and so you have 1/9 billionth percent extinction, but it still is extinction. So once you understand that, then you can see how different things can add up to the totality of extinction. You can have the entire species go extinct when you have 10 to 15%, right? Vaccines and healthcare, right? According to Bill Gates, not according to me, but according to Bill Gates, you can use vaccines, healthcare, and the technologies to reduce the world's population by 10 to 15%. 1 billion out of 9 billion is 15%. So it's killing 1 billion people, because when you say reduce a population, you're not saying prevent them from being conceived. You're saying reducing what already exists. That's objective language. And so if you just understand English, you can see what they're telling you. With vaccines, you can murder 1 billion people. Vaccines and the technology of healthcare. So go ahead and watch my video on healthcare. And what you when you end up having is you have 5% of extinction, and they add another 10% extinction, and they add another 10. Now their goal is basically to have maybe 500 million sex slaves, organic human sex slaves, right? And then everybody else can be on the servers as post-humans, right? But it could easily get out of their hand, and some of them are straight up post-humanists, which means they're objectively extinctionists. Because if you're a post-human, right, you want there to be no humans, because you want to be able to after humans. That's the same thing as extinction for the humans. So you're objectively an extinctionist. I'm going to just call him out. Peter Thiel is an extinctionist because he's a post-humanist. They're not even transhumanists. That's the part where they deceive you. Because they just want you to transition. That's transhumanism. Transsexualism is another kind of transhumanism. It's all just transhumanism, if you think about it. It's transitioning humanity to extinction. What kind of extinction? Post-humanism. Okay? This is a lot to unpack. But at the end of the day, if you have the exohuman culture, you're training your kids to be ultra traditional, but that doesn't mean you're anti-technology. So this is what makes it different from like Amish and some of the other ultra traditional cultures. Is you're trying not to go extinct. It's just that simple. You're fighting extinction, and everything. You're being the most healthy, the most prosperous, the most righteous, the most aware and prescient version of humanity that can exist. And you can find out more about exohumanism. Click on the links below. Please comment and follow and share this if you think anyone can learn from this, or if it's helpful for anyone. And as always, eplus, be human. It's exohumanism.